Imagine for a moment if one of your direct reports came to you and they said, hey, I really like working on this team and I'm enjoying the work, but I'm sometimes feeling confused about my role and what the purpose of it is and kind of what the why of the role is. And I'd love to have some conversations with you to get more clear. Wouldn't that be amazing? So we've been talking about the soul of the role and how you're going to use that with your direct reports to help them get clear and to help them become more aligned. You can do that for yourself. Wherever you are today in your career, it's always a good time for a conversation with your manager. The process of running soul of the role with your team, I'm sure, surfaced a whole bunch of insights that made you think, wait a second, maybe my role needs to shift a little bit, or maybe I'm not thinking about my role the right way. So by running the soul of the role process with your team first, you now have the data to internalize that and bring that same exact process and use all of these same questions into a series of conversations with your manager. By leaning into the soul of the role conversation for yourself, there are three main things that you're going to see happen. The first is that you're demonstrating ownership and accountability to a whole nother level. Your manager is going to notice, just like you would notice if somebody came to you and initiated this conversation. When it comes to demonstrating ownership, we've seen this happen over and over again, where managers will advance this conversation, where they'll start talking about the soul of the role with their manager, and it's part of a conversation that leads to them getting more responsibility and oftentimes even a promotion, because they've demonstrated a sense that they understand what needs to change about the culture, and they're willing to make the changes that are needed to go from where things are today to where they need to be. The second thing is it's going to advance your goal of creating more headspace. The more clarity you got with your team between where your role ends and where their role begins, the same thing holds true for your relationship with your manager. And the more clarity you get on both sides, that helps you free up the headspace that you need for the creative and strategic work that's your highest and best work to be doing. Lastly, you're setting the groundwork for an important conversation that needs to be had around resources. By you demonstrating your ability to have the soul of the role conversation and draw your people up and coach them to that next level, you're setting the groundwork for getting the resources you need over time without having to fight so hard. So part of what you can do there is, in your own self-advocacy, is demonstrate that you're in the process of changing and you're in the process, even if it's imperfect, of freeing up your own abilities to do more and be more. And that's going to make it more likely to open up a productive dialogue with your manager about where you should be going next and what you might need to do to get there. You're not going to do it in one conversation, but this is your opportunity over time, over a few one-on-ones, to start to ask for things that you haven't been able to ask for before. So here's some best practices that you can come back to as you're trying to align with your manager. First, don't assume that it's a conversation that won't interest them just because they haven't started it. Find a good moment in one of your next one-on-ones to raise the conversation. Let them know that you're using this process with your team and you're finding it helpful and you wanted to have that conversation with them. The best way to gain credibility for having this conversation with your manager is by starting with an acknowledgement of some of the things that you've noticed in doing this work with your team. By you demonstrating and sharing a little bit vulnerably about where you're seeing you've been too much in the day-to-day, you've been too much in the tactics, you start the conversation from a much more grounded place. And they're going to be much more amenable to hearing a conversation that you want to have about the evolution of your role. Don't put your manager on the spot. Break it into two parts. First, raise the topic and let them know that it's something that you'd like to work on, and then give them some space to reflect. So set the conversation up with humility. Don't expect it to change overnight, and be just as flexible with your manager as you would want your direct reports to be with you.